Welcome back, you filthy exiles. So I thought I'd do this video just as a bit of I'm not going to give you a tier list. I don't believe in tier lists, right? I don't think they're relevant to Path of Exile. I've been playing the game for the best part of like what 11 to 12 years since beta. I've got like 1,000 videos on my channel, and many of those are build guides of various nature. And in all of that time, there is just absolutely no such thing as a tier list in Path of Exile, and I'll explain why. But anyway, some of the videos that I've seen sprouting up of recent, and this is absolutely nothing against new creators coming into the scene. Absolutely 100%. You should be, if you want to have a crack, you absolutely should be taking a crack. It's a great time to especially capitalize on a number of new players coming into the game. But it's the way that you do it that matters to me. And I think I made this comment to somebody yesterday. There's a big difference between putting out genuine content that builds quality of engagement and creates a quality community environment, and then bait posting, right? So basically, some of the things, if you're a newer player in particular, you should be looking at when you look at build videos about Path of Exile 2 so far, is if they have things or catchwords that are like strongest build ever, one-shot builds, immortal builds, unkillable builds, fastest build ever, best skill in the game, so on, so on. You get my gist. At this stage, how would you know that? You don't, right? So we don't actually have the full ascendancies given to us yet to even be able to determine that. Let alone, we don't really know the scaling, we don't know the gearing, we don't know anything. We don't even know the feel of the builds. Like, there's so many elements that go into a Path of Exile build. It's not just slap on skills, have fun, like chaining. We don't know, we don't really know how this works as well. Basically all these sorts of catchphrases, and then like really selling a build for what it is not yet currently. So like, just for the sake of making a video, just to put a video out to get some views, is a bit disingenuous the way that I see it. And this is probably going to cop a bit of ire in me posting this, but as someone who, I've been doing curations for a very long time, seen a lot of different builds and a lot of different build creators come through, and there's some fantastic Path of Exile build creators out there, by the way. And unfortunately, I just can't, get them all into the list that I'll put down below. But yeah, the way that Path of Exile builds work is different to like other games that I'm not going to say the name of the game that we're all thinking about, right? We all know what it is. It's different, right? It's not six classes and which class is better than the other class, right? That's just not a thing in Path of Exile. Path of Exile has a lot of varied content, right? And varying sort of levels of complexity of that content. And where one build might do that content really well, it won't do the other thing really well, or another piece of content really well. I'll give you some examples here. You might have a build that's incredibly strong at bossing. I give you a specific build in Path of Exile 1, Ice Trappers, right? Fantastic at bossing, but guess what? Horrible at map clearing. Totally trash at map clearing, right? So you would have to run like a secondary character, and then you would basically use that for mapping, and then switch to your boss killer, and then run your bosses, and then switch back to your other character, right? That's the way that Path of Exile sort of works. Another example, Breach builds, right? So Breach is coming back. They're going to be totally different to Simulacrum builds. So optimizing for Breach is just going to be a totally different thing to optimizing for Sim. Breach is probably going to be more clear, more like widescreen explosions. Sim is really focused on being able to fetter the field full of damage and be tanky enough to take the big hits from like Kosis or, Omniphobia and stuff like that. If you don't know what they are, you new player, don't stress. Like the big bosses in Simulacrum, they're coming back into Path of Exile 2. They're in some of the trailers so far. Ultimatum builds are different to Sanctum builds, right? So Sanctum builds, you don't want to really get hit and you want to shoot from afar. Ultimatum, you want to be pretty tanky and you want to be able to really take some damage head on. And that's the parallel of difference between builds in Path of Exile. There's a use case for all of them, and this exists in other games too. But Path of Exile is quite unique in this nature, and it's why you can't really do a tier list. You could do a tier list based on the best builds to play in Sanctum, or the best builds to play in like Ultimatum, or the best builds to play in Breach or, you know, Ritual, for example, in isolation of their niche, you probably could do a tier list, right? But that being said, because every single skill can be used on every single different character, you know, you could build a warrior that could be a fantastic spellcaster. You could build a spellcaster that could be a fantastic warrior. That just gives you an idea of the way that Path of Exile works compared to other games. Moral of the story, I just don't like tier lists. And for the players looking at tier lists, I would really caution you around following tier lists. Unless, and there's a caveat to that, it's a list talking about like theory builds, you know, for example, concepts. This could work really well, but I'm not sure, sort of stuff. Um, that's the sort of commentary that you want to see around looking at like builds and build ideas and concepts. This is what I'm going to try. Basically all these sorts of discussions, like engaging discussions, but not specifically telling you this is going to be great, this is going to be fantastic, is the sort of content that you want to really look at when you're looking at going into Path of Exile 2 with a particular build archetype or style or whatever in mind. The other thing that I'd probably talk about with Path of Exile, and this will apply for Path of Exile too, everybody has a different playstyle, right? So a build that is S tier subjectively to one person is not going to be S tier subjectively to another. So, for example, I'll give you a great example of this. I hate bow builds. I dislike them. I just don't find them very fun. But I love slow melee builds. That's why I'm probably never really going to play a Deadeye, ever. Or someone's going to have to force me to do it. But I'm definitely going to play Warrior first because I love the Warrior. I love shield skills and stuff like that. That's the playstyle that I play to. So on that argument basis, I would say that, you know, Warrior is S tier and like E tier or F tier would be, you know, bow builds. But that wouldn't be appropriate for me to make that comment because what I enjoy is not what somebody else enjoys. And the way that Path of Exile works is all the classes have equally super powerful builds to a certain degree, and this has always been historically the way that it worked with Path of Exile 1, and I would assume that it's very likely the way that it'll work with Path of Exile 2. Anyway, to preface all of this conversation, I'd say that theory builds are fine, sharing ideas is perfectly fine, but advertising build guides and making really tall, unsubstantiated claims around these builds are going to be great, they're going to be the best, rah rah rah. You know, it's just going to mislead newer players in particular. And from my experience, and I've seen this for many years of making content for Path of Exile, is, you know, giving a new player a really bad user experience because you've misled them for some clicks or whatnot. That's what deters people from getting into games. And this is actually one of the problems that I saw over the years in Path of Exile 1, where you would have builds that would come out that would be really heavily gated builds, but would be very popularized early on. And then basically, inexperienced players went to go play those builds and then ultimately failed. And so they just went, bugger it, I'm not coming back to the game. And this is where the comment from a lot of people was, you know, bugger this, I'm not even going to touch Path of Exile 1, I'm just going to wait until Path of Exile 2 comes out. And this is the biggest concern I see for people like rushing out doing build guides before we've even got the full, like, we don't even have the POB guys. Like, there's no way that you can put a build guide together right now. Like, you could do a hop and a skip theory crafting session, which is something that I'm personally going to do, right? And I'll say I'm going to sit there, I'm going to go through the keystones and come up with some anecdotes based on, you know, a guesstimated logic of approaching a build. But I'm not going to tell you, like, this is exactly how you should build the build, it's going to be fantastic or anything like that. I'm going to give you a bit of an idea of a direction to go in, and then we're going to test it together. And if it fails, it fails. If it's great, fantastic, then that'll formulate into a build. Anyway, to help you weed out or look through the different people or creators that may or may not be looking to mislead you in the YouTubes currently, I've put together not an exhaustive list, but a list of well-known and or trusted creators that have been around in Path of Exile 1 for quite some time and have not just the ability to interpret what's going to happen in Path of Exile 2 to a varying degree, but an extensive game knowledge of the original game, which helps in developing a build. The concepts in Path of Exile 2 are very similar to that of Path of Exile 1, and so the people that you should look for are people who have a track record of making builds in Path of Exile 1. Even if it be the last 6 to 12 months, they're going to know more about approaching a Path of Exile 2 than somebody who's made like 20,000, I don't know, My Horse and Me videos, and then yesterday they've uploaded a video about Path of Exile 2 about the builds that they believe are going to be super OP or whatever. I would trust these people, every single one of them, and I'll put a list down below of all the creators. And if you're a creator that's been around for a long time and you're not on that list, I'm sorry, I just, didn't sort of, I just missed you. Feel free to message me and I'll add you in. But yeah, I wanted to do this video because I feel like there's such a community-driven element of Path of Exile that makes it such a great game, and I want to see every single person that plays the game have an excellent experience. I know I'm going to have a lot of fun in the game, and I hope my guides that I bring out bring a lot of fun to other people. I pride myself, and I know all these creators I've listed here pride themselves on the quality that they bring into their work and making sure that their communities are serviced with the correct information and appropriate information. So anyway, I'll leave you with that. Thanks for tuning in. And if you like this video, don't forget to like and sub to the channel. And I'll be on Twitch a little bit later. And there'll be a new player video that'll come out probably tomorrow night, I hope. Maybe the night after. It's going to take a little bit to put it together. And hopefully this gives you a bit of direction to follow if you're looking for creators that might have really good and interesting and innovative ideas.